Welcome everyone to this webinar. It's great to have you all, to welcome you to this very timely topic on how hotels can benefit from sustainability in their recovery plans. My name is Nora Steurer. I will be your moderator today, and it's really great to have this timely topic on two sectors that have both been hard hit by this global pandemic and that are so vital in the economic and especially also in the green recovery globally. So that's buildings and tourism, and hotels in particular, which in a way links the two. Before I introduce our distinguished panelists today, let me say a couple of housekeeping points. We will have a Q&A at the end. If you have questions, please post them in the chat. You should see that to your right. And please make sure to say to which speaker the question is addressed. If it's addressed to multiple or to all, please also say so. And also, I'd like to highlight this webinar is recorded. If anyone has any objections to that, please let us know. Please let us know now. Otherwise, we will continue with the recording. Let me move on to introductions now. As I said, I'm Nora. I am a program management officer with the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, the GlobalABC, which is hosted by the United Nations Environment Programme. I'm based here in Paris. And with me are four distinguished panelists. We have Madhu Rajesh, who's Director of the International Tourism Partnership, Catherine O'Brien, Director, Corporate Sustainability with Hilton, Rusmir Music, Operations Officer, Edge Global Business Development Lead with the International Finance Corporation, IFC, and Miguel Angel Figueroa, Investments Principal, Innovation, Investments and Digital Transformation with the UN World Tourism Organization, WTO. Now, before we get started with the various presentations on hotels specifically, I would like to take the opportunity of saying a few words on why buildings and how that links to tourism and how that, of course, links to hotels. So let me share my screen. Oops, excuse me. Now, buildings, I hope you can all see my screen okay. If not, please give me a shout if there's an issue. Buildings really are a growing opportunity in the truest sense of the word. Why? Why buildings? Why do we need to care about this? And corresponding to this, why do we need to care about hotels? We know from recent projections that the equivalent of Paris is added in floor space every 5 days, and that of Japan every year from now until the year 2060. As I said, I'm based in Paris. It's a lovely city. I would love to see more of the likes in the world, but it does give us an idea of the magnitude of the challenge. Half of the buildings standing in 2060 have not even been built. It's a challenge, it's an opportunity. We need to make sure that we get this right. We have this window of opportunity, a double window, if you will, with the fact that these buildings are not yet standing and with the fact that we do see a downturn, we do see a halt of construction activities at the moment. When we take it up, again, we need to do it right. Very few words about the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. We were founded at COP21, and our aim is to bring this vital sector to, which links, of course, so closely to hotels, to bring it, to align it with the Paris Agreement goals of well below 2 degrees, to raise ambitions, to mobilize all actors along the value chain, and to give this important sector a voice. We currently have over 140 members, among which are 30 countries. Without going into further depth, if you're interested in joining, please contact us afterwards. Our key activities include forging pathways, so really showing what needs to happen when and where and how around the world to give tools to make that happen, to facilitate knowledge, bring everyone around the table, including policy, including industry, to shape the global agenda, and importantly, to keep the sector under review. Where are we? Where are we going? What are the trends? And on the latter, I want to give you a couple of facts and figures. You can see here a map of energy codes for buildings. Now, I mentioned earlier that half of the buildings standing in 2060 have not even been built yet. Most of those buildings will be constructed in countries that don't have mandatory energy codes in place. So we really see that there's key regulation missing. We do know also that there are a lot of industry frontrunners that go way beyond regulation, and we need those frontrunners to also lobby to go to the policymakers and say we have to have certain key regulations in place, and energy codes are certainly among those. This is to show you that the sector is really a heavyweight. Again, this links, of course, to hotels. We see that it is responsible for 36% of final energy use and almost 40% of energy and process-related emissions. That includes materials. And I want to say a few words about energy intensity because this is important for the tourism and the hotel industry. You see here that we have positive trends in the sense of energy intensity is declining in various areas, lighting, space heating. We see increasingly efficient technology on the market, which is a good thing. We also see that with space cooling, it's the opposite. The energy intensity is increasing. We see an increasing demand for ACs because despite the current global economic downturn, we do have a rising middle class, and of course we have a warming climate. And those two together means that we will see an ever faster increase in demand. And this is, of course, important for hotels whose concern is comfort of their clients. ACs are part of the problem and they're part of the solution, but they're not the only one. We need to look at building design, which is at least, if not more important than space cooling. Forging pathways, a few words about what needs to happen. Where do we need to intervene? We need to intervene in 8 key areas to show that buildings, it's a systemic issue. It's not about the individual building, it's about the system. We need to consider urban planning, new buildings, as I mentioned, especially in emerging economies, but also retrofits. In Europe, for instance, 75% of buildings standing in 2060 are already here. So we need to have a different approach there. Operations, systems, materials, of course, to consider the entire life cycle, resilience, and naturally clean energy. I won't go into further details now because we have a lot of exciting presentations and panelists. So thank you very much for listening to Why Buildings. And without further ado, I would like to pass on the virtual microphone to Madhu Pradesh, Director with the International Tourism Partnership. Madhu, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nora. That was a great scene setter for the presentation today. So I'm Madhu Rajesh. I represent International Tourism Partnership, sorry, I'm just going to try and put my slides in full screen mode, which I always get wrong. So just bear with me while I do that. So I'm going to talk to you about one critical piece of our work, which we've recently done, which actually makes the business case for sustainable hotels, but also talk about more broadly about green buildings and the need for that as it applies to the hospitality industry. So just to introduce International Tourism Partnership to you, we are a membership organization that works with about 14 of the world's largest hotel companies, largest and prestigious hotel companies. As a collective, we represent about 15% of the industry in terms of number of hotels and about 25% of the industry in terms of number of rooms. Our membership is very diverse. It represents different sizes of hotel companies, different categories, so everything from luxury brands to basic hotels and basic accommodation, and also different ownership structures and a different geographic spread as well. We have very large multinational hotel brands as well as some very small brands and regional brands as well. And that diversity is very important to us because it gives us a good understanding of the cross-section of issues that the industry faces and some real challenges in implementing solutions, so that those insights and those voices around the table help us in creating tools, resources, and programs for the broader industry to participate in. So I guess one way of summarizing what we do is really that we create solutions for the industry in alongside the industry to make them very practical and implementable. Climate change is a very important issue, and I won't bore you with all the details of it. We see the impact it has every day in our lives, and I think it's going to be even more pronounced in the post-COVID world as we all become a little bit more conscious about the impact it can have on our daily lives and how disruptive some of it can be. So this is an area of focus that we feel will continue to be, has been and will continue to be an important one for the hotel industry in the years to come. I will focus on where I think the business case comes in for sustainable or green hotels. I think there's a lot of myths associated in some ways when it comes to sustainability and green hotels. The general perception tends to be that actually it costs more, and when it costs more, then there is a reluctance to invest in it because you don't know whether you're going to get your money back or what the implications on that might be on your profitability. And so, and I know you'll hear from Hilton and from Rosemary International Finance Corporation later, but this was our attempt to bust some of those myths, and through a rigorous piece of research which we worked on in collaboration with the International Finance Corporation, to come up with some evidence that sort of helps change that perception. So I think one of the common barriers that I hear about is that sustainability has an impact on our bottom line. And what we found through our research was that actually by investing in green hotels, you can reduce your operational costs and you can bring in efficiencies that actually do make a positive impact on the bottom line. What we also found was that where investments needed to be made, one of the questions that often gets asked is, well, if this is going to have a long payback period, I need to invest today in this intervention, and I probably won't get returns for a period of 5 years or 10 years. Whereas actually for many of the interventions that make quite a significant and tangible difference, the payback period is very often around a year, which is not that long when you think about the long-term impact of taking that action to be more mindful about the kind of building, the asset you're going to create. I think the second thing is that there is an opportunity for us, for the industry, to cater to its stakeholders in that regard. And what we're finding is that increasingly individual consumers and guests are beginning to ask the right questions about sustainability. And I think this debate will only get louder in the post-COVID world, where people challenge all their suppliers and the products they buy on what is it that they're doing to make a positive impact. And not just the individual customers. I think we are all part of each other's supply chains in some way or the other. So even the B2B customers will take a more active interest and do increasingly take an active interest in the carbon and environmental footprint of the businesses they deal with. Owners and investors, certainly investors are increasingly getting interested in sustainability and how various industries are engaging with it and what are the concrete steps they're taking. So I think there's an opportunity here to satisfy consumer preference, but also potentially increase revenue. The real proof of the pudding in this conversation will be, are people willing to pay a premium for hotels or for any product that is more sustainable than its less environmentally conscious counterpart? So I think that is going to be an interesting trend to see if people are willing to put their money where their mouth is. I think the third thing is a green building generally tends to be, in some ways, you're future-proofing your asset by increasing the asset value. So that is an important consideration that did come to light as part of our research, that there is an opportunity to increase your asset value by focusing right at the outset on the kind of building you would like to design and how sustainable you would want it to be. The fourth element was very much around helping manage risk, but also leverage incentives, because increasingly there is regulation, and we're seeing this in a number of cities. There is increasing regulation which stipulates standards for buildings, but equally there are governments and investors and financiers coming in with incentives, and I'm sure Roosmer and others will talk about this in a bit more detail later on in the conversation. But by focusing on sustainability and taking an approach to green design right at the outset, there is an opportunity to be able to manage the regulatory issues that that one can face, but also leverage some incentives that are out there. There's also an opportunity to increase asset value through investing in certifications, because a green building that's well designed from the outset will have a better chance of getting the certifications it needs. And we see a lot of focus on different kinds of certifications, LEED and BREEAM, and there's a number of certifications out there. And then also looking at more renewable and sustainable sources of energy, which in some ways helps one future-proof its energy sources. So there are a number of reasons that builds the business case for sustainability from a financial and a commercial perspective, rather than the traditional ethical perspective that we always hear about, that sustainability is all about the need to do good things because that's the ethical thing to do. What we are trying to say through our work is that actually there's a commercial business case to be doing it as well. So how do we want to promote action on this? I think one of the biggest learnings for us was that very often when you think of a sustainable hotel, you call out the hotel brand who has its logo on the building to be the one who needs to take responsibility for it, because most people don't understand how complex the industry dynamic is. And we associate ownership of the building with the brand whose logo there is on the building, whereas actually the brand is probably just either franchise or managing the property, but the asset itself is owned by someone else, and the brand comes in very often after the asset has been built. So I think there's a need to just understand that dynamic and look at promoting action across the value chain. So what we're trying to do here is really promote collaboration across that value chain, start with the investors and the asset managers, get them to think about the focus on design, build the business case for their investments in it, engage with other people who supply to them, so owners and developers, operators, and the franchisees in the hotel brand. So it's something that can't happen in isolation. Everyone needs to think of it as a jigsaw puzzle, and the whole piece needs to come together in this. So that's been a focus of our work, and we would like to get the word out to all these investor categories and stakeholder categories to make sure people are aware and using it as well. The business case itself is available to download on our website. It's a free resource, and I'd encourage everyone to download it and read it if it's a subject matter of interest to you. And I'd probably just like to conclude by saying that the need for collaboration with your competitors, with your stakeholders, has never been more important than it is now. And that is the way we are going to be able to solve some of the issues that we all want to work on in the context of the current climate, where resources are scarce and the need for action has never been bigger than before. So I'll conclude and pass on to Katrin, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhu. This was a fascinating presentation, and I really especially liked your emphasis on the payback, which is actually often only 1 year. So this is great to know, as well as your emphasis on the customers challenging and asking questions on sustainability. And I think also the point of the value chain was great, and this is something that we see at the GlobalABC all the time. It is so much more complex than we often realize, and then the customer realizes. So I think also really a great point. And now we're very excited to hear from someone directly involved in a hotel, or in a hotel chain rather. So I'm very pleased to welcome again Katrin O'Brien, Corporate Sustainability Officer, Hilton. Katrin, over to you.
Thank you, Nora, and a big thank you to the ITP team for organizing this webinar. It's really great to be here with all of you to share what we're doing at Hilton. So over the last 100 years, Hilton has been committed to making a positive impact in the communities in which we operate. We're a purpose-driven company, and our corporate responsibility program, which we call Travel with Purpose, is at the heart of everything we do. In 2018, we committed to redefine sustainable travel and tourism when we set the goal to cut our environmental footprint in half and double our social impact by 2030. And at Hilton, we recognize climate change to be a most critical threat, and we've made combating it a top priority, which is why we were proud to be the first major hotel brand to set science-based carbon targets aligned with the Paris Climate Agreement. But the really great thing about sustainability, as Madhu mentioned in her presentation, is that it's not just the right thing to do. It's not only about saving our planet for future generations. There's also a huge business upside to hotels taking steps to operate more efficiently. So I'm going to share some examples to really bring this to life. The Hilton Garden Inn Dubai Mall of the Emirates is a 370-room hotel that opened at the end of 2015. The hotel's owners worked really closely with Hilton to incorporate sustainable development principles into this project. So at Hilton, we set minimum energy and water efficiency standards for all of our hotels, but this project sought to go above and beyond those standards. The hotel's sustainability attributes include fully integrated building management systems, solar thermal panels, and an innovative gray water recycling system that uses ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis to actually treat the gray water from sinks, showers, and washing machines for use in the hotel's cooling towers. And that gray water system is saving up to 6,000 gallons of water per day. Those three systems alone save the hotel over $200,000 per year in energy and water costs. And through implementation of these types of features, the property was able to achieve LEED Gold certification. These investments resulted in less than a 4-year payback period, and ownership has received really significant accolades for leading the region and sustainable development with this property. The Hilton Shillong is a eco-wellness retreat. It's located on 2,500 acres of land in one of India's most biodiverse regions. And to develop this hotel, the owners brought together a team of designers, horticulturalists, engineers, and ecologists to create a retreat that was really focused on conservation and ecological restoration. The hotel was purposely designed to look to merge into its natural surroundings, and the hotel team used natural materials in its construction. Its sustainability measures include rooftops that actually collect and harvest rainwater, energy efficient appliances, and a solar farm that provides 80% of the hotel's power. The property also has an on-site water bottling plant that enables them to provide safe drinking water to guests in reusable glass bottles, significantly reducing waste as well as costs. And much of the Hilton Shillong's food is grown organically on site. And the hotel team uses this as an opportunity to engage closely with its guests around sustainability. For example, guests are invited to participate in educational programs to learn all about organic farming. This property's investments in sustainability have paid off both financially and from a reputation perspective. The hotel has received significant media attention around its practices, and it's also been featured as one of the top eco-resorts in the world, which is helping it to attract environmentally minded guests from around the world. I also wanted to highlight that smaller focused service hotels can also greatly benefit from investing in sustainability. The owners of the 84-room Hampton Inn & Suites in Roseburg, Oregon, incorporated sustainability considerations very early into the hotel's design and build phase in 2017. They implemented a variety of measures, including Energy Star certified equipment and a rooftop solar array. And hotel ownership was able to take advantage of numerous tax credits and incentives for these projects, and those credits actually covered more than half of the initial cost. These investments resulted in an 18% ROI, and the solar panels actually exceeded their production targets, providing over 115 megawatt hours of clean electricity for the hotel annually. There have been non-financial benefits for this property as well. Ownership has found that guests are really interested in learning more about the hotel's environmental practices, so they actively share their sustainability story through the in-room TVs. And as a testament to the hotel team's hospitality and ability to engage their guests, especially around these issues, at the end of 2019, the property had one of the highest guest satisfaction scores of the 2,500 Hampton Inn properties in the US. So these are just 3 examples across our portfolio of over 6,200 hotels in 119 countries and territories. And given the size and the scale of our portfolio, understanding our impact and our opportunities is a huge undertaking in and of itself, which is why in 2008, we developed a proprietary cloud-based sustainability management system called LightStay. We use LightStay to measure, manage, and reduce the environmental impact of all of our hotels around the world. And through LightStay, our hotels log their sustainability projects and they share best practices. So using LightStay, we've been able to quantify that since 2008, our hotels have implemented over 111,000 projects to reduce energy, water, and waste. And through those projects, our owners have saved over $1 billion in utility costs. And those savings aren't just from investing in advanced building technologies or on-site renewables like the properties that I mentioned earlier. We are certainly committed to building and retrofitting sustainable hotels, but even more important for a portfolio of our size, we're focused on operating our existing properties as efficiently as possible. So to do that, we're taking steps to minimize our environmental footprint while maximizing our building's performance and continuing to maintain or improve the guest experience. And many of those steps that we're taking are low or no cost, which makes them ideal for our hotels to implement during these really challenging times. As an example, our engineering leaders have developed a program called Back to Basics that focuses on the simple actions that our engineers can take to reduce consumption in our hotels, such as turning off lighting or turning off equipment when it's not in use. And what we know is that when amplified across a hotel, these no-cost actions really add up. So we estimate that a 200-room hotel can save over $70,000 per year just by implementing those zero-cost measures from our Back to Basics program. So to finish up, these were just a few examples, but what I hope you'll take away from this is that there's an enormous opportunity for hotels to benefit both financially and non-financially from incorporating sustainability into their recovery plans. Some of these benefits can be achieved through very low and no cost actions. Others require upfront investment. And the really good news is there's many tools available to support hotel teams that are seeking to realize these opportunities. And I know that my colleagues from IFC and UNWTO are going to share some examples of those tools and how they can be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katrin, for this great presentation, and certainly made me very much want to travel here and now, seeing those lovely pictures. And similar to Madhu, you also really highlighted the business case, which is, as you said, especially in these times, is so important. The low cost or no cost measures you describe and how they add up, I think is a very important point, and also how that links to guest behavior and how that can be leveraged. I furthermore liked really how you highlighted the community aspect in the example in Pune, I think it was, and the systemic aspect of hotels. It touches on energy, on water, on food, and then it enhances guest experience and it enables you to engage with the community. So this was really great to hear from a practitioner. Now, without further ado, let me switch to Rusmir Music, Operations Officer with the International Finance Corporation. Rusmir, over to you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate having being here and being able to present and talk to you. So as folks have introduced me, and hopefully you can see, can you see? Oh, not yet. Can you see my screen? Just last, I'm gonna do it this way.
Yes, we can. Not your presentation yet, but your screen we see.
Got it.
Yes.
All of this new technology and everything. So hopefully you can see it now.
Yes, perfect.
It's very, very exciting to have this entire group of people talk about it, because you'll see that we're quite aligned in our approaches. And as Madhu said, sustainability really is a jigsaw puzzle. It is something that the entire ecosystem needs to be engaging in, and IFC has been building our approach for a comprehensive approach to green buildings, which includes investment and advisory to banks, investment and advisory for the building sector. We also work with governments, and we rope all of that into the EDGE certification program as well. What we want to talk about today is the financial opportunity for, especially during recovery. And this includes looking into your profits, as well as from the revenue and cost perspective. So revenue will depend on the willingness of tourists to return to travel. But we do know, and we will show you in some of our case studies, that travelers are increasingly looking for green destinations. So when tourists return and they have many options to choose from, you can differentiate yourself with a green label. Costs consist both of operating costs and costs of financing. I will show you how resource efficiency can help you deeply cut operating costs for your hotels. But you also do have a possibility of accessing cheaper or better financing through international green finance, either to refinance existing projects or to launch new ones. IFC itself is looking to launch some of these investment programs in pilot countries, especially to help with recovery. The owner of a typical conventional hotel spends more than $2,000 each year per each room on energy consumption, and this can range from 6 to 20% of their total energy bills. So energy becomes the single largest line item after labor for a hotel. And you heard from Hilton about decision-making that is financially driven with quantified impacts on the bottom line. And apart from Hilton, we have many, many other examples as well. At the same time, there is quite a misperception, Madhu alluded to this, of the incremental cost for efficiency. But according to our research that we executed with ITP, hotel properties in emerging markets can implement at least 20% efficiency with a very attractive payback period that is less than a year in most places. These properties here have had the opportunity for tremendous utility bill savings, as high as $264,000 in annual cost reduction. ITP's research through CDP, which was shared in the business case for sustainable hotels, shows that the ROI on retrofit measures is just as attractive, from 2 to maybe 5 years in some areas, and these retrofit measures become even more attractive as the cost of energy increases. So you heard from Madhu that this and many other case studies was released in our business case for sustainable hotels paper. This truly is sort of the best thinking out there, supplemented with incredible case studies. So we really encourage you to download the paper, read it, and come back to us. But what I want to show you is that how we did this analysis. And this was done using the Edge software, which is the first of its kind in the world. It is free to all of you, so any hotel under any brand can use it, with the complexity of the interface hidden behind a very attractive user screen. You can see on the top of the screen that Edge connects impact measures with a financial calculator. So Edge can become an important decision-making tool for developers or for owners, whether it's a new hotel or an existing hotel, to really help you understand where you can get the best return on your investment. So it is an impact tool, but it connects very quickly to financial measures as well. The Edge website has a library of case studies of certified hotels. These can be used for promotion or for proof of concept. Each one of these studies, and you can reach it from edgebuildings.com, has much more information, including technical measures, who the investor is, and who the owner is. And again, we invite you to log in and look at this research. Today, you're getting just a preview of resources, but we want you to know that IFC has done incredible deep dives. So with ITP, we launched our business case paper that kind of collected some of our best thinking. And with the UNWTO, who is going to speak next, we've done trainings on access to green finance for hotels, what governments can do in this work, how consultants can access these resources. And all of this is available from the UNWTO website. So both the recording and the presentations are available. We invite you to watch them, to look through, and then reach out back to us with questions. And again, I'll show you just a preview today because we don't have time for a deep dive. But one of the things that we did with UNWTO is looked at what are the technical measures that we need to implement to reach carbon neutrality for hotels. And you'll see that each of these technical measures are in fact available to today. Carbon neutrality for hotels is not about putting a man on the moon. It's about implementing sensible technical measures that already exist. And the financing pathways also exist. We can help you reach direct investments from both the likes of IFC, other development finance institutions, as well as commercial banks. IFC, for example, is looking to launch investment programs via local financial institutions, which help us get further reach. We're working into aggregator models where hotel associations or government can actually help us put together special purpose vehicles to invest. And we've done a lot of training both on this forum and with the financial forums on how to access green finance via capital markets, via green bonds and others. So I'll end just with a quick call to action for you to understand again that there's many resources available to you. We want you to watch our training with UNWTO and really read and integrate the analysis on the return on investment that was launched in the business case. There's quite a lot of technical training that is available to you, or you can hire an already accredited edge expert accredited by IFC. We have lots of different marketing materials and case studies, and we also want you to know that IFC has done a mapping of banks and governments that already have incentives. So in your market, incentives for green buildings may already exist. And finally, we call on you to work with IFC on regional platforms and investments. So from our end, and I'll conclude here, whether you are an investor, a developer of a new hotel, an owner of a property, a consultant, a government, or even a student, we have resources for you. We want you to work with us. I'll stop there, Nora.
Thank you so much, Rusmir. What a compelling case, what a compelling business case, finance case. I really like the point that you highlighted. We have the measures available, the technology, the finance is there. We have the cases that are needed to convince whoever needs convincing. So thanks so much for speaking here at this International Tourism Partnership webinar. I would like to highlight that anyone who has questions, please post them in the chat. We have some questions coming in. Please don't hesitate and please say to whom they are directed. Rusmir, again, I really also liked how you highlighted the low payback time. The ROIs were very reasonable. I think this was a point made by so far by all of our three presenters. So I think this is very important, especially in those times. And your slides also really show that this is a case that can be made all around the world. You had examples from Asia, Africa, Europe, from the Americas. So really quite convincing. So thanks so much. And without further ado, I would now like to pass the virtual microphone to Miguel Angel Figueroa, Investments Principal Innovation, Investments and Digital Transformation with the UN World Tourism Organization. Miguel, over to you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. I will try to keep up with the really good presentations. Let me put my screen. Okay. So can you see it, right? Hello, can you see it, right? Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay.
And your presentation looks good. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much. I will try to give you a big picture of what we do at the UNWTO. We basically work trying to increase the sustainability measures and the competitiveness of the tourism sector. We work with 156 countries. We have different regions that we actually reach out. And in the investments area that I'm in charge of, we have three main pillars, as you can see. One is the investment networks, where we try to collaborate as this conference with multilateral cooperation, other private investors and different other stakeholders. We also work with the investment promotion, and that is where we help the countries to promote their strategies for investments. And of course, that includes different projects and programs related to infrastructure all the ways from hotels to airports. And the last component is the investment mobilization. When we kind of match both of above, we try to convene and be in the gatekeepers, sort of say, in this process, trying to match the investors with the offers of capital and demand of capital with the country members that we work with. And in this process, we started working with IFC and all these organizations that are in this conference as well. And it's a really, really important time, as you know, and beyond the impact of this pandemic, I think there is a huge, and I personally believe that a huge opportunity to develop different strategies beyond the recovery plans. And just to give you a glimpse of the big data, or the big picture, sorry, is that, for instance, in the sector, about 100 to 120 million of jobs are at risk. From that ecosystem in the hotel, about 20% is related with the accommodation, as you may be all aware. And in doing that, we start working with IFC, as Roshni was saying, and sharing different training programs related to green investments, and trying to encourage people just to promote the implementation of different tools like the EDGE and the other certifications to get into this journey of green investments. And this is kind of one of the screenshot of the results that we had in this time. We received about 1,000 applications from 118 countries, and it was really interesting to see the demand and the interest, especially after the first semester with the pandemic. Just to shift gears, I want to share with you this data on investments that we actually partner with the Financial Times, with the FDI, the market intelligence from the Financial Times, and we develop a report. And this is the third year that we are developing this report on FDI greenfield investments, and it's really interesting. So this is really fresh, that we will be launching next week, and it will be available in our websites. But just to give you like the big picture, is super interesting to see that in the last kind of 5 years, there is almost half of the investments are concentrated in developed countries, and about 30 to 35% of those investments are made in actually 5 countries. And the other really good point on this graphic is that about 1/3 of the investments on greenfield investments on the tourism sector are made on the last 2 years, 2008, 2019. And this is really interesting because despite of the FDI investments worldwide is going down the last 3 years in 17 to 30%, the tourism sector is actually growing, and you can see the resilience of the sector through the last 5 years. And this is just an example of there's a lot of things to be done in terms of new investments, as somebody was sharing before. There's evidence that most of the FDI kind of greenfield investments are developing or allocated in developed countries, like about 90%. But in the last 10 years, with the data that we had, is decreasing. Just to give an example, in the States, they usually have more investments the last 5 years, but the last 3 years, the investments are decreasing, and those flows of investments are moving to emerging markets like Latin America, to give you an example. So what I wanted you to take from these slides of investments, on greenfield investments, is 2 things. One is that there is a lot of things to do in emerging markets, and there is also different really good strategies, just to name some, for instance, from Accor, that they are investing in a big portfolio of projects in 15 cities in Africa, and they are teaming up with another big private equity. And there are other kind of forms of investments that are being developed by other institutional investors focusing on emerging economies. That's kind of one of the main things that I want to share. And the other thing is that most of the last 3 years of investments are being exponentially growing in Asia, actually. And this, from the projections that we are having, that will be a big opportunity market, and as well Latin America and Africa in that order. Just to give you an example, in terms of the demand, for instance, of international tourist arrivals for 2019, we received about 1.5 billion last year, and the projections that we have for 2030 is almost 2 billion, 1.8 to be exact, people that will be traveling. And the numbers of trips that we'll be making are about 15 billion trips per by 2030. So what does that mean to us? It means that the infrastructure that we have right now is not suitable for that size of the demand that we might have in the future. Another insight from this is that the consumer that we might have in the future, as you all know, are millennials, are the Generation Z, and the sociology of this new customer. They are more digital, they are more sustainable, they like the short trips, they like to travel 3 to 4 times in the year compared with the other generations. They like authenticity, they like transparency. So what does that mean for us? It means that we need to think in terms of what is the next for investments for the next 10 years. How can we improve different financial vehicles and mechanisms that will facilitate different types of investment in these emerging markets? Learning, of course, from all the investments that we have done in developed countries, but also shifting the way towards a sustainable kind of resilient future, taking advantage of these markets that are not developed yet. In terms of the COVID impact for the rest of this year, it fall about 75%. But still, like as the borders are opening up again, you can see the growth of investments again. So in the data that we have, the tourism sector is very, it has shown that it's very resilient in the years. So this will not be an exception. Of course, it will take time, but the demand from a market point of view is huge in the next 10 years. And just to finish with these slides, the investment opportunities that as I was sharing are related with in the short term, I would say, related with the experience and the solutions that our colleagues from Hilton were showing and sharing, for instance. And I think that is a really good opportunity to actually interact and complement with the travel tech startups that are growing exponentially. And this is really, really important in order to improve all the infrastructure that is already in place. Another thing that is, I think, a theme on these conversations that I actually took notes is the credibility and the perceptions. In the UNWTO, we are talking about the trust as the new currency. So we need to kind of put together these ideas to see what are the best strategies to promote and to communicate the trust to not just the customers, but to all the stakeholders that are part of this tourism ecosystem. Because if we don't work in the clear message now, not just about the retrofitting, but also about the future of investments, it will be really hard to take advantage of this opportunity in this time being. The other ideas that we have for investment opportunities are related with the business models based on the sociology of the new customers that I was telling you about. We work, for example, with about 7,000 travel tech startups with different events that we develop, and we find out just amazing new business models. Just to give you an example, there are a startup actually here from Madrid that is working with micro stains, and that is actually answering to a need of the shortness of the needs for short stays in the hotels, for instance, and they're taking advantage and tapping in that opportunity. So my point is that if we start thinking not just from the infrastructure and hard investment or traditional investment point of view, we might actually need to integrate to our interventions these new innovative business models and try to work with different travel tech startups and so forth and so on. And of course, the green investments, that is a given, but also we need to understand what are the behaviors that we need to tackle to the customers. There's a lot of research out there on behavioral economics and how can we actually communicate and promote and create value for the customers, not just from the sense of I want to save the planet and this is important for us, but also from the perspective of the status and from the perspective of economics of the behaviors that they might have and the perceptions and the status that they have as customers. So I don't want to take over the conversation, but this is a lot to unpack. I'm personally excited about this because I like to play with data and I like to collaborate with all of you and to be part of some big response in this time being is just absolutely a good opportunity to work with you guys. And if you have any questions, please, you can write in the comments, and you can actually visit our websites in the UNWTO to find more resources. I think that is all that I can share now.
Thank you so much, Miguel. What a great presentation. Really also liked the emphasis on innovation, on working with startups, making use of opportunities there, and also your link to behavioral incentives and the insights we can have from there for customer communication. I think that also links to Madhu's point earlier that customers are and will ever more challenge hotels and ask what are they doing in terms of sustainability. And as Rusmi also said, when travel resumes, how will people make their choices? They might look for green destinations and green hotels. Also really liked how you showed us the investment flows and the large chunk of investment that is actually concentrated on a handful of countries, although we do see an increasing investment flow into emerging economies, especially in Asia. So I think also that links nicely to what Rusmi was presenting and the mapping exercises that IFC have done, and how we really see that there are cases all around the world, and hopefully these investment flows will pick up ever more. Now we have some time for questions. I would like to ask all our panelists to turn on their cameras again. So if you could please, thank you. I'll turn on your cameras again. And let me start with Miguel. Miguel, you have shown us where the industry currently stands with investment flows, with sustainability considerations, especially in light of the current crisis. You've shown us that there's 120 million jobs who are in jeopardy in this industry. Can you tell us a little bit, what do you think are the key areas for development over the next few years for sustainability in this industry, especially maybe in light of the current crisis? What do you think will be the next big topic when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, I think there are two layers or several layers on this. In the short term is the liquidity issues that you all know that we have, but in the long term, I think is of course related with the importance of the innovation on the green funding mechanisms to fund new hotels, and also how can we communicate the importance of this to the customers. I think there's few research on the behavioral economics of the customers, and how that will actually demand or will create a case for demand for different services that like big brands can offer. And I think there are some cases like BlackRock, I think, that is doing good strategies there related to innovate, and creating different kind of investment mechanisms. But I think that's one thing. The other thing is that because we work with tier 2, tier 3 countries. There's this huge need for capital, and not just for capital, also for technology on investments in emerging markets. There is kind of like a lot of things going on in Latin America with flows of capitals to Mexico, for instance, for the last 10, 15 years. But interestingly, there are countries like Colombia and Peru that are growing, and Costa Rica that are kind of segmenting their projects on green investments, and they are trying to be very selective on the kind of tourists that they attract, but also in the projects that they build. And I think if we kind of have the big picture and try to categorize or make maybe a taxonomy, I don't want to get to take it there on the countries and the strategies that we can create with these emerging countries, I think that would be a really good starting point to create different financial mechanisms.
Thanks, Miguel. So really take into consideration emerging economies and the capital flows there. Sorry, if we could just ask everyone to mute themselves while they're not speaking. That way we can prevent echo. Thank you. And then also, of course, really taking advantage of behavioral approaches. So thanks very much for sharing your insights. On that last part, let me ask you, Katrin, as a practitioner with Hilton, what type of recommendations do you have for communicating about sustainability with guests and partners? If you could share some of your insights.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I've been watching a lot of the Climate Week content this week. And one quote that struck me was from Carter Roberts, the CEO of WWF. He said that in order to be effective, environmental communicators must frame their arguments in a way that's understandable and relatable to all. And that's such a critical point. And what we really strive to do at Hilton is to message our sustainability efforts differently depending on what stakeholders we're engaging with. So from a guest perspective, one thing that we know is really important is to avoid making guests feel guilty about the choices that they're making. So instead, it's more effective to share what the hotel is doing to reduce its impact and then invite guests to help support that effort. We're also really focused on making any data that we share relatable to everyone. So we know that the amount of carbon in 1 metric ton, for example, is not easy to conceptualize. And we're focused on finding ways to translate a hotel's environmental savings into tangible figures that are easy to understand, such as the number of cars taken off the road through the equivalent of our carbon reduction, or the number of Olympic swimming pools worth of water that we've saved. And we actually try to share this information with our guests paperlessly. So the data for each of our hotels can actually be found on the landing page when you log into the Wi-Fi at any of our properties. That data is feeding in real time from our LightSafe system, and it's those tangible facts around what reductions the hotel has achieved, as well as the positive social impact that it's had.
Thank you, Katrin. Those are some really great points, especially this about not making guests feel guilty, but instead sharing what you're doing, showing that you're taking the lead, and then also the type of communication. Indeed, this is something that we encounter as well. Talking about tons of carbon is not very relatable, but making comparisons to giving real life examples is. So thanks for sharing that. Very insightful. I would like to turn now to Rusmir, and you talked so well about finance flows and the kind of mechanisms that are out there and that IFC is developing. You talked about EDGE, the mapping exercises, showing the type of the banks that already have green incentives in place. Of course, now we're dealing with this global pandemic. So what are some of the key lessons from this crisis on how we can deal with the climate emergency, especially for hotels? So in other words, how can we make the best use of this situation and maybe also see it as a chance as well as a crisis?
Great question. The crisis, I think, has made everyone stop and think about what have we been doing just because it's been business as usual, and what could we actually do differently? When it comes to hotels, it's a really kind of once in a generation opportunity where the asset is going unused. So now is really the time to say, I'm not actually disrupting my operations if I do renovations, if I do modernization, if I put things into place. I'm not going to be kicking out my guests because they're not quite here yet. And as everybody was saying, once the guests return, they are going to return to a new normal. They're going to be more picky. We know that they're looking for green, and as the younger generation is even more mindful, that is happening. So we've seen, I think, with the crisis, when you get a stakeholder group to act, action is possible. And so again, the invitation is work with us. You have people from the private sector, public sector. IFC kind of sits in the middle between the two. We know we have resources for you. We really just need believers to say, this is something that's going to be profitable for me as well as good for the environment. And we hope that you will read our myriad case studies that really convinces you this is a profitable thing to do in the end.
Thanks so much, Rusmir. Indeed, this can be used as an opportunity. There are assets in the hotel industry that are currently resting, so to speak. So let's use this, and let's make sure that customers that indeed will probably become more picky when trouble picks up again, that customers pick those assets, and that those assets really have made use of these times. Last but most certainly not least, I would like to turn to Madhu. And of course, we know there are hotels that are front runners, that are really thinking through their journey, that are thinking how can they align their assets, their hotels, with the Paris Agreement goals, that are thinking how can they communicate with guests, that are thinking how can they redirect investment, what about ROIs and so on. But of course, we also have others who are more hesitant or who are just starting out. So can you maybe share what would be your advice for hotels who are just getting started on their sustainability journey?
Absolutely. I think the first thing I'll say is for any hotel that's just getting started, the thought of sustainability can actually be quite overwhelming. And I'd just like to reassure them and say, you're not alone, and that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of work that's already happened, and knowledge and resources that exist that you can leverage and benefit from. So first of all, I'd say, visit our website. There's a range of free tools and resources there to get you started. But equally reach out to us, and we'd be very happy to have conversations and support hotels and sort of point them in the right direction. So that's one. I think the second thing I'd say is that commitment from the senior leadership is very, very important. And I think that's where we see that with our members, that because the senior leadership has bought into it, things move at a faster pace. And that's reflected in the composition of our board and structure. So I think that get the buy-in of your leadership would be another piece of advice I'd give. I'd say measure, because that's the only way that you can get started, to measure and benchmark. And again, I'd point to a couple of tools on our website around carbon and energy measurement and water measurement, which are free tools. And there are resources to help you understand what those tools can do for you, but they can be good starting points for an individual hotel to measure its footprint and also benchmark against other hotels in its neighborhood to see if there are any learnings or things to take on board. Think about how you engage with your stakeholders and local community. I think people on this panel have shared some examples of how they're doing it and communicating it. Katrin had some good examples of how to engage with guests. I think that's very important. And then I think I'd say more than anything, believe in yourself that you're on the right track, and support is out there to help you make progress.
Thanks so much, Madhu. Those are some great words to end this webinar on. I think this was fantastic advice. Get senior leadership buy-in is absolutely essential. That is also our experience. Measure. You can't make progress on what you don't measure. And the message also, there are tools. You're not alone. There are tools available. We've heard them today. We've heard them from Madhu. We've heard them from Rusmir. We've heard them from Miguel. We've heard from Katrin, how they are doing on their journey. Also, the engagement with stakeholders, really important. So those are some really important messages for our participants today. Also, the encouragement to reach out. Please do that. Please contact us if you want to get started, if you want information, if you have questions. So with this, we would like to close this webinar, this great international tourism partnership event. It has been really a pleasure to moderate such excellent speakers. I think we have heard some very, very good points on the business case for sustainability in hotels, the very reasonable ROIs, the important measures that we can take beyond pure investment to really make the case for everyone, the importance of aligning ourselves with the Paris Agreement, the innovation potential that we see, especially in the crisis now, and to really make use of that to position ourselves, to make ourselves and our hotel unique and really a target in the positive sense for the new generation, for the next generation once travel picks up again. So thank you so much for making such compelling cases. And with that, I would like to conclude. Have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are. And please do reach out to contact us with any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.